This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
About what I said last week. Never mind. On second thought, go ahead and panic. Next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it, gets caught.
Hey, they said you can't beat Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it, get it, touchdown, Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him, and a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle, caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet, touchdown Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. And yeah, last week, I'm doing the Jonah Hill gif here for you. Yes, go ahead and just forget the whole thing. Because that was among the most worrisome wins I have seen in 42 years as a Michigan football fan. And I saw it in person against Purdue last Saturday. So why the sudden change of course? Well, other than the fact that when it comes to my favorite teams, I am emotionally unstable. And I do think it is vitally important that those of you who are unfortunately consuming this content need to take that into account, frankly. You do. Not even tongue-in-cheek, straight up, I am emotionally unstable when it comes to my favorite teams. So keep that in mind. That should just be part of any of your calculus and how to receive my comments and commentary here on the Michigan Podcast. But that aside, because that's a real thing, but that aside, there was the rivalry factor. Rivalry games can be weird, all right? We might have had 4 guys on our team last year that would start for Ohio State, and yet we go into Columbus and win. I can remember a Michigan team that had Tyrone Wheatley, Tim Biaka-Batuka, Jay Remersma, these guys are all pros. Amani Toomer, pro. Todd Collins, pro. At least 3 pros on the offensive line. Goes to East Lansing in 1993, scores 7 points against a Michigan State team that couldn't beat Central Michigan at home. You know, rivalry games are weird. And so it's difficult to take long, large calculations out of games that in and of themselves are considered to be one-game seasons by both sides, all right? So you could say, hey, yeah, Bryce kind of flinched. We're on the road. It's a rivalry game. Thankfully, we got the plan B. Still won by a couple scores. We were going to win by 3 scores. You know, Wink put the backups in the secondary. They got lit up. You know, they got a garbage time touchdown to cover. No big deal. We got the hell out of there. That was fine. But then you see carryover to the next week. And I think at this point, we just have to just say it. Bryce Underwood is regressing a bit here. And I have I have been to Michigan games in the same seats now for the last 4 seasons. And I think, and I say this about myself too to some degree, I think fans are just dead wrong about the offensive coaching on this team. The tropes are all wrong. This is actually the best constructed and most complicated and layered passing game Michigan has had in a long time. The route tree precision, the amount of guys schemed open, way more than I can ever recall before. Well, Steve, you saw them play Purdue and they suck. Well, I saw them play Purdue in 2023. They sucked then. I saw them play Nebraska in 2022. They sucked then. I saw them play Minnesota last year. They didn't suck. They were okay. There were more guys open downfield than I can ever remember in any of those games. Guys were consistently being schemed open, and they were just missed. And I do think our quarterback, our young man here, is a little punch drunk from the amount of hits he's taken the last few weeks. This offensive line is really coming together with the 3 redshirt freshmen up front. When it comes to the run blocking, you're seeing that. The counting and advanced stats confirm that. But pass blocking still leaves a lot to be desired, and Gio El Hadi might be the worst pass blocker on the offensive line, frankly. And he's your 5th-year senior. So I think he's taken too many shots. I think how confined the offense was early on, particularly on the road, to bubble wrap on him. I think that stymied and stunted his growth. And I just think he's lacking for confidence now. And now he's doing the thing when you lack for confidence, when you press too much. I mean, there were 2 red zone turnovers there that you just can't commit. You just can't do it. And he commit once, let alone twice. And that's why Michigan's got to, run a 4-minute offense against friggin' Purdue, okay, to close out a game that should have been a laugher. Because if you score those 2 drives, then, it's a whole different game. You maybe break Purdue's will. You're up 21-7 or 20-7 or 17-7 at the half and you get the ball. You might have broken Purdue's will there. Instead, they're still fighting. They're still scrapping. You're still making mistakes. So that's a terrible football team that we at least may think they could beat us on Saturday. Now, some of this is injuries. I mean, my goodness, the injuries on this team are absolutely ridiculous. In winning time on Saturday night, we're playing 6 guys with freshman eligibility on offense. There's only 11 positions, folks. That's more than half of the offense. I mean, we're 1 injury away at linebacker from, putting my now just chubby but no longer morbidly obese rear end in at linebacker. I couldn't tell you who the backups are after the 2 guys we got playing now. There's so many injuries there. I mean, the injuries on this team are ridiculous. The amount of guys who have gotten hurt during practice this year, ridiculous. In fact, I can't think of a time that we won a game and it made me think we need to reassess our entire program. But that's what it felt like watching that game in person on Saturday. It was absolutely excruciating. By the way, we do need to reevaluate the training, strength and conditioning going on. The injury factor here, absolutely ridiculous, the amount of injuries on this team. I have no idea what I don't know what our passing game is. I am confident we have a good passing scheme based on what I saw. But I just don't think we can execute it right now. And I think we kind of, in many respects, this team is a poor man's version of the 2021 team. Derek Moore is having a great year, but he's not Aiden Hutchinson. But I mean, I could see him get some all Big Ten All-American run for sure. But he's not an Aiden Hutchinson level player. Jordan Marshall is kind of your Hassan Haskins running back, because Corn was hurt much of the second half of that season, remember? And he carried the load, but Hassan Haskins was also a grown-ass man, a 5th-year senior. This is a young man who's a true sophomore, redshirt freshman, and was hurt a lot of last year. He has not had 4 years of major college strength and conditioning, and with the old strength and conditioning staff, the way that Hassan Haskins had to just essentially put that offense on his back. And we don't have a stabilizing force at quarterback. I know Cade McNamara didn't do a lot to win games that year, and maybe his best pass was a 5-yard shallow cross to Eric All against Penn State. That being said, he was a stabilizing force and didn't do anything to really lose any games either. We don't have a stabilizing force right now. I think, in fact, you're probably getting an idea of what things would have looked like if JJ had started as a freshman on that team. So this is a team that has shown it can pretty much run the ball pretty much on everyone. I mean, we had big run plays against USC. We had a couple of big run plays against Oklahoma. I think we can have a competent running game against virtually any team in college football. Competent at the floor, explosive at the ceiling. That was the 21 team, but we don't have a stabilizing force at quarterback. We're way too beat up with injuries. And I don't think that's going to be good enough. I don't, to win this thing. What I see when I watch Ohio State, first of all, I see a team that on a neutral field would probably be about a touchdown underdog to last year's team. They're nowhere near as talented comprehensively. But we may never see a team that talented ever again with the money so spread out in the sport now. But what I do see is a team that is more willing to play complementary football than any of Ryan Day's previous teams. And if they're willing to do that, then the talent advantage becomes a much bigger factor against us. I'm going to tell you right now, we're not beating Maryland or Northwestern with the way we played Saturday against Purdue. We got to get better to win the game at Wrigley in 2 weeks. Not to mention, I need a bye week. I need a week off from watching this team play, especially on special teams. My goodness, what a weekly disaster that has been this entire season. When I look at this program, I see we win games for one reason and one reason only. We're just the more talented team. Now, the good news is that's why most teams win. However, if you just want to go 8-4, 9-3 every year, and you don't, that's fine. But to get to where we want to go, you have to win games for more reasons than we're the most talented team. It's very clear the amount of injuries and everything else, our strength conditioning training is lagging. We're 9 games into the year. We don't have a passing game. I understand what our passing scheme is, and I think Chip knows what he's doing, and it's pretty sound. But we just don't have the players to execute it yet. We need to dial the passing scheme down, come up with about 5 or 6 plays, or maybe one concept and a few plays off of that concept that Bryce can do, and that's our passing game to complement the running game. It should just simply be, if we've got to pass more than 20 times, we're probably losing anyway. So we're only going to pass 20 times. At least 10 of them are going to be play action. And a few of those are going to be with Bryce under center. Because I just don't think we can run the offense. I mean, trying to run Chip's offense without a competent bubble screen is like trying to run Jimmy's offense without a competent tight end. And we don't have a competent bubble screen because we don't have a slot receiver on this team, per se. We have guys like Marsh we can put in the slot, but by doing that, it limits the overall depth and breadth of the passing game because he's also our best outside receiver. So you're kind of robbing Peter to play Paul. So I mean, I'm dialing this thing back. Pardon me. I'm dialing it back. The passing game is just there. So if you go 9 in the box, we run some play action and try to beat you with that. And we're a grinded out team. That's what we are. I think moving forward the rest of the way this season. I also think it's possible we might be better off not making the playoff, even if we were to win out. I can make the case that we might be better off as a program getting those 15 bowl practices and having more time to just focus on portal recruiting in the ladder and just, kind of getting away for a bit, work on ourselves, scout ourselves, then go to a playoff game where we're probably going to show the country we don't belong in a playoff. Let's hope we have that problem at the end of the year. We're going to have to win out to even contemplate having it. But what I see right now is not a team that's going to win out. I see an extremely young team that is paying the price for lackluster recruiting Jimmy's last 2 years. The good news is recruiting's really picked up and our talent level in the younger classes is great. The bad news is we need like one more of those classes and that won't be here for another few months. So it just kind of feels like it's not always your year. We have more Big Ten championships than any other program, but we don't win it every single year. It's just not always your year, and it's kind of feeling like this just isn't our year. Folks, the best way to support us here at Michigan Podcast is to do so via our Patreon page, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. We are posting picks there year round, whether it's Major League Baseball, whether it's college basketball, whether it's the NFL, and of course, college football. Our win total best bets, you would have gotten those, for example, before the market moved. About half the books in the last few days moved on Texas under 10.5 down to 9.5. If you were following us on Patreon when we posted that, you would have gotten that before that number moved, right? So we give you all kinds of great data and picks, PGA major picks as well. We've cashed 8 of the last 11 majors in professional golf. So if you want to support us on our Patreon page, it's just $10 a month there at patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's right, just $10 a month. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. And thank you so very much if you're one of our supporters already. Well, enough about what I think. I'm sure for a way more positive take, let's go to our one and only resident Bucknut himself, Mark Rogers. And I think I can see you working, Mark. I think I can hear you saying, all right, man, I've heard this one before. I heard this one in 93. I heard this one in 95. I heard this one in 96. I heard this one last year. I've heard this one before. I've heard this one. And I'm not falling for your maize and blue rope-a-dope, okay? Not giving any kind of maize and blue rope-a-dope. I'm just telling you what I saw. And what I saw was a team that doesn't win for any other reason other than they're just the more talented team. They don't really have a passing scheme installed. I like the passing scheme. I like what Chip wants to do. We just cannot do it. We just don't have. Bryce isn't ready yet, and we don't have the receivers that can elevate him and make it easier for him. We can't run it. And we're way too young. I mean, we finished the Purdue game, and over half of the offense were players with freshman eligibility. We're just way too young. And you know, the lackluster recruiting Jimmy's last 2 years, whether it's Jimmy's fault, Ward's fault, you know, lots of message board geniuses and urban legends about why we decided to wait 2 years to actually pay players like all of our peer group was, but we're paying the price for that. That's why all our best players are in their first or second year, which means maybe you better get us this year. Frankly, it could kind of mean that. All right. But it just feels like it's just not our year, and we're at least a year away. That's just kind of what it felt like to me. But Mark, your thoughts?
Steve, when you introduced me as being optimistic about the situation, I didn't know if that meant optimistic for Michigan, because I, outside of 2021, 22, 23, seem to be more optimistic about Michigan football than you are, or more optimistic from my side of the septic tank, as you like to say.
Yes.
Because of what I see happening possibly in 3 weeks. Can I hijack your show for like 30 seconds?
Of course.
Because I think you'll appreciate this. Bad beats weekend for me this past weekend. So I missed 2 games, Virginia Tech, Louisville, and Stanford Pitt by 0.5 point. I missed the Cal Virginia game because I had Cal +6, and they threw a pick 6 down 3 with 15 seconds left in the game to lose by 10. And then I had Georgia covering a touchdown when they were up by 4, and Gunnar Stockton took a knee at the 1-yard line where he could have gone in. And I understand that's the better football play to make. You don't give up the football on the kickoff, but he could have scored to win by 11. So with those 4 horrible beats, I still go 12-7 on the weekend against the spread. Man, I could have had a remarkable weekend. Okay, back to Michigan football.
And everybody hates you. Anyway, go ahead. Yes. Yeah.
So I tend to compare this team to 21, 22, 23 and look back at that. I'm watching Bryce Underwood miss passes and miss some deep throws on Saturday night against Purdue. And I'm thinking, wasn't J.J. McCarthy doing that his first full season in 22? It was late in the season. I remember a close game against Maryland and thinking he's missing these throws. It's being talked about, just consistently missing deep. But you rather have your quarterback miss them long, because obviously he's showing off the arm strength. So obviously your quarterback's going to be fine eventually. It may not be this season, but it is kind of a bit troubling to see the regression in 2 consecutive games. And that's what we've seen against Michigan State and against Purdue. The other thing is, I am not into the transitive property of comparing one score against one score. I know a lot of Michigan fans bought into, and you made the comment, but I didn't see it as the same way. I thought a legitimate comment from you comparing the Washington effort by Michigan versus the Washington effort by Ohio State. That's legitimate, but in just sheer score comparisons. But I like to collect scores. And now we're seeing a trend here in the Big Ten among Michigan opponents where Purdue played a better game on the scoreboard. I know that it could have been worse in Michigan's favor, But a 5-point loss by Purdue is basically the best game that they've played. Like everybody else beat Purdue more soundly than Michigan. Mm-hmm. Pretty much everybody beat Wisconsin more soundly than Michigan. Mm-hmm. Pretty much everybody beat Michigan State, more, including UCLA by 25 points, traveling across the country. Beat Michigan State more soundly than Michigan. Like, I would compare this team from a quality perspective. I think it would be fair, more in line with the Jimbo teams of, can I call him Jimbo, 2015 through like 2019, generally. Maybe the worst team was 2017, at least record-wise. But those teams would pummel the dregs of the Big Ten, and this team just can't do that. So, and the style of play is pretty similar. In terms of, I understand some of that's based on conservative play calling and conservative approach and run game heavy, that you don't beat teams into submission on the scoreboard. But those teams did against the dregs of the Big Ten. So I think this is a pretty good football team. We know who they are. We know that they're a really good defensive unit, but nowhere close to what the standard was for 3 seasons. Interesting comparison you made. I caught the last few minutes of your spiel with Hassan Haskins and Jordan Marshall. I don't know. Is there a number 3 back?
Not really.
Who is now a number 2 back?
Yeah.
That you can rely on, because some of these teams, like watching Nebraska play and give the ball to Emmett Johnson 30 times and they have no trust of any other running back in the room, seems a bit ridiculous for a program of that stature.
That was Michigan down the stretch in 21 with Jimmy, though. Corum was hurt much of the second half, and it was just run Hassan Haskins into the ground. Just remember, though, Hassan he was a 5th-year senior. He'd been through 4 years of strength and conditioning. He'd also been switched to linebacker and back. It's just not the same as a young man who is a true sophomore, redshirt freshman in eligibility, was hurt most of last year. It's just not, in terms of physical development, he's just not Hassan Haskins yet. He's just not.
You mentioned 8-4 and 9-3 type seasons. You just don't want to be stuck in that purgatory going forward. The powers that be need to decide whether Sharon Moore is clearly the guy, but obviously he's not going to get fired after going 9-3. But is he clearly the guy to take this team to where it needs to be on a regular basis? This program, a program builder, and the guy that can be the core of this program.
Well, what's interesting about the counting stats you mentioned is we look on the inside. What's funny is Purdue had one of their lowest yardage outputs of the season against us at the same time. Okay, we ran for the most yards against Michigan State than we have in 30 years. Okay, and we averaged more than 3 yards per play more than Wisconsin did in net yards per play, which means you know from looking at these kinds of stats, if you are 3 yards per play better than the opponent in net yards per play, you're usually winning by 3 touchdowns or more. All right. And so that just kind of reinforces my point that the elements of where this team could eventually be are there. It's just not a complete team. The elements are there. It's missing some elements. It's missing the kind of wide receiver that on 3rd and 7 in the red zone, when you tried to run the ball, but you ran out of space, you're like, you know what, just throw up to that guy in the corner. He'll make the catch. And it looks like the quarterback was great when really it was just a jump ball and he went and got it, right? That's the difference for a lot of fans that don't understand, Mark, and you get this because you do get it. That's often the difference between are you an efficient red zone team or not, okay, is do you have guys that are just like, you know what, I'm just going to make a play, and we think we have those guys. It's just redshirt freshman Jordan Marshall, true freshman Bryce Underwood, true freshman Andrew Marsh. All right, and we just don't have the juniors and seniors to make those plays. That doesn't rely on those kinds of guys too much. That's why the more I think about it, it's just not always your year, and I just don't think it's our year.
And so the next 2 games after this bye week, they are going to be and 90-some% certainty to win those games. Not that they're they are substantially better than Northwestern and Maryland, but they still could find themselves in competitive games because of all the mistakes that you outlined, because of the youth, because of the injuries. I don't know the prognosis of John Barham or Jimmy Rolder or
I think Rolder, from what I'm hearing, I think Rolder and Barham will be back after the bye. Maryland at the latest. Justice Haynes will never play another down of football here. Okay. But I could also argue that if he's healthy, to beat Ohio State, Jordan Marshall is probably the better style of running back. Play keep away, going to grind this thing out, rather than nothing, 70 yards. Nothing, 30 yards, okay? But I don't think Justice Haynes will play another down of football here. I do think Barham and Rolder will be back for Northwestern, Maryland at the latest. Sullivan is the one I'm concerned about, whether he can play for Ohio State, because frankly, I think he's over, next to Derek Moore, he's been the best defensive player Michigan has had this year.
So then we got Northwestern and Maryland games that should be 2-score victories. I would think Michigan should beat those teams worse than that, but Maryland shows that they can lead anybody in the fourth quarter outside of Indiana, that they have that kind of talent. And this Malik Washington quarterback, you're going to have dueling true freshman quarterbacks going at it there. I would love to see another one of those mid-tier kind of Big Ten opponents on the schedule, Illinois, Iowa, somebody like that. Mm-hmm. Pass the test against Washington with flying colors, the Oklahoma and USC efforts. Those are the 3 games that are peer-level competition games to evaluate this team.
Yep.
And the Oklahoma and USC games were almost, in some senses, mirror images of each other.
Yep, they were, no doubt. And we criticize the offensive game plan that Michigan used in those games. In hindsight, based on more data and what we have now, it appears the coaches may have actually done the right thing. That it's a combination of he may or may not be ready, but the weaponry necessary to really find out, or if he's close but not there, can push him over the top like what Julian Sayin has. It's nowhere near there. And so that combination of things is why they went into this shell trying to win 17-10, and they just couldn't get it done in either one of those circumstances. In hindsight, they actually maybe had the right game plan. We just didn't want to admit it or understand that at the time. All right,
I know you've got some bucknuts there in the comment section that'll jump on maybe a Sayin versus Underwood comparison, but you can't make the comparison. There's such a difference between being a redshirt freshman and being a true freshman when you can be in the system and you can play football at a major school for a year against an elite defense practice every day.
Not to mention, hey, I'm not sure what to do. Yeah, I know he's double covered against Penn State, and I'm about to have my head taken off, but let me just throw the ball literally like a high school play. Let me throw the ball down the field as far as I can and just trust that my guy will outrun the entire opposing secondary like it's high school to get it. And that happened. All right.
Let's give him a little more credit than that. He can't drop it in a bucket.
I give him credit for sitting in there at 5'10" and 170 pounds and taking one hell of a shot. I give him a lot of credit for that. I couldn't do it. But ultimately, that is what he did. I mean, even when you watch the throwing motion, it's literally like a heave. Let me throw this thing as far as I can and trust that that's literally what happened. He did that. Let me go trust the guy that's the biggest, fastest guy out here is going to outrun the other team's secondary. Jeremiah Smith is a superhero. Okay, he's just an alien. And you just should not. Chris Olave couldn't do that. Marvin Harrison couldn't do that. And these guys were great. You should not be able to do that at this level. You just should not be able to do it. All right.
The other guy's pretty good too on the other side, Cardinal Tate.
Yes.
Too.
But the other guy's not outrunning a triple team. Because he was double teamed, and then the third safety comes over to try to break the play up. That play was just nuts, man, nuts. He is like if Herschel Walker was a receiver. It's crazy. Okay, and he's a different receiver than Moss. Different. Yeah. You know the whole thing of getting mossed, right? Just if he's even, he's leaving. That was kind of the Randy Moss kind of thing. This guy just dust fools like it's Friday night. And hey, I hit puberty first. I shaved first. I discovered creatine first. Okay. And I'm just, I'm just closer to manhood than all of you. He's doing this to grown men at the highest level. He's insane, is what he is. Insane.
And his numbers have suffered because they broke in Julian Sayin, and this was a great game plan for the season to protect Julian Sayin, not physically, but protect him in terms of play calling and bring him along. And then starting about the Minnesota game, they started to cut him loose. Then they really cut him loose against Wisconsin. And now it's just full throttle back to Ohio State football of the Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields era. CJ Stroud let this kid throw. They only threw it 23 times, but still 20 of 23. Second quarterback, Geno Smith being the other in 50 years of college football, 3 consecutive games, 80%, 300 yards, 3+ touchdown passes, no picks.
It's pretty good. No doubt. It's pretty good. All right. Before we let you go, playoff rankings tonight. Looking at the history of how this committee operates, I'm pretty confident Indiana's going to be number one. And the reason why is they're going to say they have the best win of the college football season against Oregon on the road. One of my issues is, and it doesn't really matter because Ohio State at worst will be 2, and they may end up playing undefeated in the Big Ten championship game, the way things are looking. And so it'll just get settled on the field. But one of the things I hate about this time of year is people focus so much on who you lost to or how well you played in losses. Like the AP still having Tennessee ranked, I don't understand, okay? To me, I would focus on who you've beaten. Who are you at your best? Not necessarily what you were at your worst. And I mean that when we're assessing teams as like subjective subject matter against one another when it's not clear. I'm much more in favor of judging a team by what their ceiling is than what their floor was, particularly at this level. The old Lou Holtz axiom, you're coaching a different team every single week, right? I'm much more impressed by the fact that that Indiana was able to go on the road and beat Oregon than Ole Miss lost a close game on the road at Georgia, okay? To me, I want to know who you beat and what's the best you can be, because ultimately that's what a playoff is here to determine, right? Who's the best team? Who's the championship team? So I'd much prefer to judge teams off of their best than their worst, but what do you think?
Well, I think it goes back to the theme that you're talking about and have the entire season. You personally about the talent being spread out. Therefore, you want to see how the team performs at its best. I like to evaluate both ends of the spectrum. I try to take it all into consideration because I do think that there is something to, I've got 3 performance factors or 3 criteria, I should say, in my rankings. And they're number 1, basically just your win-loss record. Number 2 is the schedule, the strength of the schedule and the opponents you played, obviously, but it is number 3. I am going to differentiate between a 28-27 loss to Team A versus a 50-0 loss against Team A. I do think that there's validity in that, but yeah, we're looking for the best wins on the college football season. And for folks that watch you and only see me here, might be surprised. I've got Indiana number 1, Texas A&M number 2, and Ohio State number 3. Now, that doesn't mean that I believe Indiana is better than Ohio State. I'm basing that on a resume. Those are my resume rankings of those 3 teams.
So tell me, because this now might be where I disagree with the Buckeye fan. A&M's best win is LSU on the road. Ohio State's best win is Texas.
Notre Dame.
Oh, Notre Dame on the road. I forgot about that. All right, so okay. So you view Notre Dame as the superior 2-loss team. Even though, see, this is where I would disagree again, because Notre Dame's perception of strength is based off who they lost to and how close the games were. Where Texas now, has already beaten Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, 2, top 15 teams. I think that's better than any wins that Notre Dame has.
I think that Texas A&M has like most teams in the SEC this year, and people don't want to hear it that follow me that love the Big Ten, and I do too, that the SEC is a better conference from top to bottom. Therefore, they have a deeper pool of wins.
Okay.
Ohio State.
What I think is going to be fascinating is how many 10-2 teams there are at the end of the year.
Oh.
And then how we're going to filter through those and what that's going to look like, and I'm not going to get all worked up about it because a lot of these teams still play each other, but there's a lot of ways that we could end up with 6, 7, 8, and especially if Michigan pulls the upset at the end of the year, we can end up with 6, 7, 8, 10-2 teams from power conferences, Mark, and we don't have the playoff spots in this format for that. So. Let's throw out a hypothetical, right? Let's say there's 6 10-2 teams for 4 spots. And Michigan upsets Ohio State, but it's because Derek Moore or somebody off the edge knocks Julian Sain out of the game in the second quarter. And so Michigan wins the game like 24-17 or something like that. And it's the best win anybody has. I mean, they were the number 1, number 2 team, right? But there's a caveat there. They knocked the starting quarterback out. You see what I'm saying? I mean, yeah. So what's that? And Michigan's second best win, maybe that depends on how good Washington turns out to be, because that'd be Michigan's second best win. And maybe if Washington's 9-3 or something at the end of the year, then. But see, I wonder if you look at the schedules and the amount of teams that are in position and then in position to be in position, like Michigan currently is, it is not inconceivable that we are looking at one hell of an at-large selection process here with a bunch of 10-2 teams in about a month.
Yeah, and then the comparisons roll in with USC beat Michigan.
Right, they could be 10-2 as well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or Notre Dame, Miami. Notre Dame and Miami both go 10-2, but Miami beat Notre Dame. So, I mean, whew.
Yeah,
okay.
Miami beat Notre Dame,
right.
But Notre Dame beat USC, but USC beat Michigan.
Yeah, so
we have a lot of those. And obviously, as a Big Ten fan, you just want the deck to be cleared in the ACC and the Big 12. We do not want Duke to ascend. Duke, they actually have ESPN's highest percentage chance of winning the ACC. They only have one loss in the conference.
Right.
An extremely easy schedule. So we don't need 10-3 Duke beating a one-loss Georgia Tech team or something like that.
Let me give you an even worse scenario from a Big Ten perspective, and that is like Duke and Louisville in the ACC championship game. Georgia Tech is out with one loss, but beats Georgia Thanksgiving weekend and is sitting there 11-1, doesn't have to play in the ACC championship game and beat Georgia on rivalry weekend. That's a nightmare scenario for the Big Ten right there. That's taking a bit from somebody.
Duke wins the ACC championship game. Louisville doesn't even make it. And therefore, they're spared with one loss.
And they beat Miami
11-1.
Yeah, and they beat Miami.
And Duke wins the ACC.
Yeah. See, there's a lot to factor in here down the stretch, and the games will decide some of this. But there are lots of ways we could end up with a half a dozen 10-2 teams and only 3-4 spots for those teams. It'll be very, very interesting down the stretch for sure.
When I did my preseason predictions, I didn't try to do this. I landed with basically what was a 12-team tie for the final two spots.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it's going to get quite that ridiculous, but maybe 6 or 7.
Yeah.
In that range. And we'll see tonight if the committee values the record, like in the case of BYU being undefeated, if they're going to value that or how much they do over some one-loss teams.
Right. All right, good stuff, my friend. Talk to you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet. We'll come back, wrap things up in a moment. This week's X-Poll results. Do you really believe Justice Haynes is going to risk the NFL draft by rushing back post-surgery to play again this season? 77% of you said no. 23% of you said, I have a double-digit IQ. And thank you for outing yourself in public. We do appreciate that public service. Thank you. And that brings us to our feedback of the week from Football Scout 365. He says, of course, I believe it's a no, but he brings up a very good point here, I think, or at least an intriguing one. He says, but I wouldn't rule out NIL playing a role in keeping Justice at Michigan one more year. Right now, I have a round 2 grade on him, but he could slip due to positional value and that injury. If Michigan matches that rookie 3rd-round minimum, he could be back. That could happen. I also think with Jordan Marshall and Savion Hyder and Jasper Parker, that's a pretty good 3-headed monster at running back for next year, and I'd be more inclined to spend that money elsewhere. Receiver, okay, but that's an analysis that I think you have to factor that in now. Guys can make, if they're not going to be first or second day draft picks, meaning Thursday or Friday, and they're going to go third day, if they have eligibility, a lot of times they'll make more money going back to the school they were at than taking that 4th round grade or lower. So that's a good point there by Football Scout 365. All right, don't forget to like, rate, subscribe. Easy for me to say. Like, share, comment, all those great things that help the show to grow, help us to find more Michigan fans just like you. I heard from a slew of you when I was at the Big House and then Ford Field the next day last weekend that are fans of Michigan podcasts. So thank you very much for all of that. Love all your comments as well. Appreciate those, even the really stupid ones, especially those, in fact. And also, you can follow us on X in between episodes. Good news, no game this week, so you will not have to be privy to my fragile psyche and absolute cowardice. But you can follow us, nevertheless, on X, at Michigan Podcast on X. Until the next time, I'm Steve Dace. Go Blue.